Do you think that we come into the world with some genetic leanings toward particular activities being right for us or more right for us? And how do you think about it in terms of how many difficult, hard to access things we do just so that we're sure that we have a full experience of life? Because what I hear you saying, and I totally subscribe to, is that our early experience becomes the funnel through which we have more or less opportunity later. Like the kind of width of the funnel depends on how many things we did or didn't do early on.
So this is really interesting because, first of all, take somebody like the Williams sisters. They got drilled on tennis from day one, and this stuff can be taught, and this is why they became champions. And this is obvious, but this is the same way you find with chess champions and golf champions like Woods and so on. You have to really spend the time doing it. Now, I find this interesting for a few reasons. One is that cognitively, you can understand how to, what a forehand or a backhand, is a hit in tennis, but to actually get good at it, you have to burn it down into the circuitry. So actually, let me back up for 1 second, which is the reason that we have brain plasticity is because this is how a brain makes things that you do fast and efficient. So when you're doing a task a lot, like serving tennis or something, you're taking that from the software to the hardware of the brain. Let's say I'm an amateur tennis player and there's Serena Williams. I'm playing against her. It turns out, surprisingly, when we're playing, she's beaten me like crazy, but my brain's the one using all the activity. I'm the one burning all the calories with my brain. Why? Because she has burned tennis into the hardware of the brain, so it's fast and efficient. I, on the other hand, am trying to simulate lots of things and figure out where I should go and all that. So the brain does this for reasons of efficiency. Obviously, the brain's main job is to save energy because we are mobile creatures who run on batteries. And so this is one of the big things about plasticity. So people get extraordinarily good by doing things over and over. These three women, the Polgar sisters, who are chess champions, they're the best, to my knowledge, are still the best three female chess players in the world. Their father, from day one, started teaching them how to do chess and so on, and they all became world champions at this. The thing about whether you need to have diversification, that's an interesting question. I can see why it would be useful because you're learning different ways, different moves about it, in the same way that if you learn how to snowboard and ski, you might get better at both of them. But I gotta say, when children grow up, let's say trilingually, or even bilingually, they end up having a lower vocabulary in both languages than if they grow up monolingually.
Really?
Yeah. It's just because of the amount of practice you get with a language.
Kids still do your second language homework. In California, it's growing up here, it's very useful to know English and some Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very useful. In fact, I wish I had gotten better at Spanish when I was a kid.
Claro que sí.
My father's born and raised in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, cool.
But we didn't speak Spanish at home, at least not very much. So, I can tell you, learn a musical instrument and learn a second language. The musical instrument for your own enrichment and those around you. But the second language thing, I think, is extremely useful, at least in California. I find it to be very useful. But
a lot of kids are resisting this, by the way, now because they say, look, I can do Google Translate or, my Meta sunglasses. And so they're resisting it.
Yeah, but Google Translate is not Google Relate.
I totally agree.
I mean, I'm hardly fluent, but I can get by now. I'm pretty good. I've been practicing my Spanish more and more, and just by virtue of living in Southern California, that just happens. But I think knowing a second language and being able to have that kind of face-to-face conversation with someone, it's even the struggle of it is enriching in a way because you're forcing your brain to do some work.
My father spoke 8 languages fluently without accent. And that's because he went to medical school in Europe and did his clinical rotations in different countries. And, he was a young man, so everywhere he went, he got a girlfriend. And then he had the incentive to learn the language. And by the way, maybe we'll come to this, but when it comes to brain plasticity, the reward systems are a big part of what makes change happen in the brain. Actually, let me just mention, this is tangential, but let me just mention this while it's on my mind. A lot of people really for the last 30 years, ever since the internet became a big thing, really worried about what this is going to mean for kids and education. I think it's terrific. I am very optimistic about this because what kids started getting a few decades ago was this opportunity to learn about something right when they were curious about it. So they want to know how to fix the bicycle tire, or what is this space physics thing, or whatever. And they ask the question and get the answer. Why does that matter? It's because brain plasticity really happens when you have the right cocktail of neurotransmitters present. And that cocktail happens to map onto curiosity or engagement. When I'm slightly older than you are, but when when we were in school, the teacher teaches you the thing. They just dump everything. Like, oh, the Battle of Hastings happened in 1066, and you may or may not ever need to know that. But what kids get now is information right in the context of their curiosity, and that makes a big difference because stuff really sticks. And I have been extraordinarily impressed with young people that I meet. I meet all these young people who say these extraordinary things, and I say, wow, how did you know that? And they've watched TED Talks, they've asked Alexa, they've talked to ChatGPT, and they get the information and it sticks.
Super interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. I guess I'm reflecting my age to everyone when I say that, I remember being interested in something and then having to bike or skateboard down to Tower Books or go to the library and look things up. And I tell myself that the effort involved in going to get it actually is useful. But you're right. Had I been able to kind of look up what I was interested in and get it right then, I probably would have spent more time implementing the information because I was interested in all sorts of things that usually involved building something or doing something that was going to make a big mess and frustrate my parents, right? But I spent a lot of time searching for the information.
Yeah. Plus, you remember how dinner table conversations used to go, which is that everyone argues about something, and then someone says, well, I think it's this, and the other person says, no, I think it's that. And then it just sort of stops there because no one knows the right answer. But now everyone whips out their phone, gets the answer, and then it keeps going, which is really terrific.
Yeah, it's dissolved some of the social dominance that comes about when one person's word is the word that everyone has to just kind of believe just because they say it with more certainty.
They're the father or whatever. Exactly.
Yeah, or the grandfather or whoever, or the grandmother in some cases, who knows. Now it gets checked against the internet and Claude for me, or ChatGPT for a lot of other people.